Today was a sad day for our democracy in the sense that for the first time, the government in Parliament walked out during a budget debate and prevented the leader of the opposition from completing his presentation, denying the Parliament of a quorum, so the Speaker had no choice but to end the proceedings. And I, as leader of the opposition, was unable to finish my presentation. I didn't say anything offensive about anybody. I made a point of principle, which is that it doesn't sit well with the tradition in our parliamentary system, which requires the Speaker of the House to be independent of the government, for the wife of the Prime Minister, who's the head of government, to be the Speaker, which is effectively the head of Parliament. And these concerns are not just my concerns. Many Jamaicans feel that way. And in fact, the international community also has concerns about it because it's really a very unusual situation. And indeed, the Prime Minister, who in an emotional fit stood up and walked out and precipitated the situation which brought the proceedings to an end, really himself reinforced the validity of the point I was making, that there needs to be proper independence between the Speaker and the government. And by virtue of them being spouses, there is none. That was the point I was making. And her conduct, Mrs. Holness's conduct, has given rise to concerns by not tabling the reports of the Auditor General on a timely basis as they arrive. There are reports which have been, I'm told, reached Parliament from January, which have two Auditor General performance audit reports that have not been tabled. By determining that certain reports of the Integrity Commission must be sent to an oversight committee within Parliament, which is dominated by the government side and chaired by the government side, before those reports are tabled and made public. These are issues of grave concern to me, as somebody who believes in the parliamentary system and in democracy, and indeed for many Jamaicans. So this is why I thought it was essential to make this point in my presentation. And the reaction of the Prime Minister to it reinforced my concerns. Furthermore, Mrs. Holness has refused to make public or even share with us as members of Parliament and senators the legal opinion which she claims justifies the position she's taken. If that is the case, then why isn't she sharing it with us? It wasn't given to her in her personal capacity. It was sent because it concerns matters affecting Parliament in a very fundamental way. To deprive the Parliament of the benefit of that legal opinion is itself an egregious act, inconsistent with transparency in the way we conduct our parliamentary affairs. What I believe happened was that when the speech was shared in Parliament and the Prime Minister saw the points that were coming after the point I was making, he decided to take this action because he didn't want me to have the opportunity of making those points in Parliament in front of him. And what are those points that I'm referring to? The next point I was going to make was that the illicit six, which is a matter of grave concern in the country, is another instance where governance in Jamaica is being brought to a low ebb, where 6 MPs are under investigation for illicit enrichment. And the Prime Minister not only has declined to make public who they are, but has put a gag order on his cabinet forbidding them from talking to the media on any issues relating to the Integrity Commission. And the point I was going to make after that was that the Prime Minister, as head of government, cannot be in a situation where he is not in good standing with the Integrity Commission of the country. He has failed to have his statutory declaration certified. And that statutory declaration lists his assets, his liabilities, and his income. And for successive years, the Integrity Commission has not certified and published a summary of his declaration. That is an untenable situation for Jamaica. And in my speech, the next point I was going to make was to say, if I were in his position, I would take away myself and replace myself with somebody else who is not compromised. The Prime Minister knew that was what was coming next. He couldn't face the heat, so he decided to walk out. First time ever in the history of Jamaica, the government ends the budget presentation of the leader of the opposition by pulling out their members and denying the parliament a quorum so the proceedings couldn't be completed. Yeah. I'm glad I was able to, on Duke Street, standing on a wall, addressing those who were there, finish my speech right then and then. But it's a shame that I was unable to do so in the parliament of the land.
The opposition seconded Mrs. Holness's ascension to the speaker chair. Why raise that issue now, as opposed to when she assumed the chair in September last year?
Two things I would say about that. First of all, when that arose, we were not briefed in advance. We weren't consulted with. I was not in Parliament that day. And the clerk to the House presented the leader of opposition business with the script and said, this is a tradition that the opposition seconds the motion. And he had no opportunity to consult with any of our members, and he decided to follow the tradition that he was told existed. But furthermore, her conduct subsequent to that appointment has reinforced the issue of principle, which gave rise to my concern. Because as I've said, she has adopted a course of action where reports are not being presented and tabled on a timely basis. And a timely basis in this context means as soon as they arrive, they are to be tabled and made public. And she is not doing that. And she has not released the opinion of the Attorney General, which was given to Parliament for the benefit of Parliament, to advise Parliament. She has not released it, which she says justifies her actions, but we don't know because we haven't had an opportunity to see it. And Integrity Commission reports, some of them, she has said, are to be sent to an oversight committee, which the government dominate in terms of numbers. They have the vast majority on that oversight committee. They chair that oversight committee. So they can decline to have it tabled. They can string that out as long as they wish. That is not consistent with proper governance in the country. And I thought it was an appropriate occasion and necessary for me to say that I have concerns that this does not sit well with the tradition of the Speaker of the Parliament being an independent umpire of the proceedings of Parliament. And the Prime Minister's actions today reinforce those concerns.
But why would the leader of opposition business co-sign something that the opposition in general seems to be against at this point?
That's the question.
Go ahead.
That's it.
Could you step in, please, sir?
Yeah.
Firstly, since independence, every elected government has been able to secure the speaker that that elected government has put forward. It has never happened that an opposition objects to the speaker proposed. And we are fulfilling a tradition. It has happened when we are a government, and I have been a long-standing member of the Parliament, and it will, I believe, continue to happen, that the formality of electing a speaker is just that. The government, as the majority player in the Parliament, can elect whoever it wishes. It is the tradition of the opposition to second it. And in fact, a vote was taken and it was passed unanimously.
Yeah.
But surely, if it's a matter of principle that you're objecting on, you could have opposed her appointment, which you didn't. Which is why I'm asking you, opposition leader, did Mr. Paul make the wrong move in not objecting to the appointment of Mrs. Holness as House Speaker on September 26th last year?
I'm not sitting in judgment of the leader of opposition business. He was put in a position with no prior consultation. We weren't told what was happening. He came to Parliament. I wasn't there. And he was presented with a script by the clerk and told this is a tradition. And the tradition is that the opposition seconds the motion, because the idea is that the Speaker is supposed to be independent and have the trust and confidence of all parliamentarians on both sides. My issue is that she has not displayed by her conduct that kind of independence, because she has continued on a course of action, which is to delay the tabling of reports, important reports that no doubt may criticize aspects of what's happening in the public sector. And we are not getting to see them on a timely basis.
Are you calling for her resignation?
I'm not calling for anything. I'm just saying that it doesn't sit well. I would love the government they should reconsider the position and decide whether, in the context of what has happened, they ought to continue with the status quo. You know, I just thought that it was a legitimate point to make when I'm speaking about good governance. That aspect of my speech had a series of issues around governance in the country. And this is a live issue. in Jamaica now. Mark Golding is not the only person who has this concern. This concern is shared widely across Jamaica and abroad with our diaspora.
There was a conversation between Mr. Powell and Ms. Grange behind the Speaker's chair earlier this afternoon. Did that discussion not bear any fruit to have them to return to Parliament to have you complete your speech?
Well, I was trying to urge her members to return to allow the leader of the opposition to complete his presentation. I pointed out how unprecedented this was and the implications it has for the remainder of the debate. She did not relent.
Does this irreparably damage parliamentary discourse, bearing in mind that you could do a tit for tat, because you could really walk out when the Prime Minister gets up in Parliament on Thursday?
I certainly think that it has spoiled the budget debate. It has made the budget debate not what it should be, because the opposition has not had an opportunity to complete their presentation, especially the leaders' presentation on issues which are very important to the country, around governance of the country. That is when they pulled the plug, because they didn't like to hear the truth that was being presented to them by me this afternoon. And so it will affect our future participation in this budget debate.
Will it be in Parliament on Thursday?
You will see. You will see. We are considering that matter. But my present inclination is that the parliamentary, the budget process has been irreparably undermined by their actions.
What if the government digs in its heels and says it's not going to change, it's not going to maintain it as it is? What next for the opposition?
We'll continue to make the points that we're making. We're not here to try and persuade the government. We're answerable to the people. And the people spoke on the 26th of February and gave us a majority across the country. We had over 21,000 more votes than the Jamaica Labour Party. And we are responding to that because the people want us to act in their interests. And their interests demand that we stand up for what is right in the country and not to just allow things to continue to slide down this precipice of bad governance and unprincipled decisions on critical issues.
Do you think this was just a rush of blood to the head and in due course things will subside, good sense will prevail? What are your thoughts?
I hope so. I think it was a terrible error on the part of the Prime Minister. He let his emotions determine his actions. And I think he has put himself in an invidious position by creating history, by walking out. When has a government ever walked out of its own parliament when it has a majority? It's absurd. It's frankly absurd. And I believe that when they reflect, I hope that they will see the error of their ways. I did not say anything offensive. I wasn't rude. I simply said that to have the head of government in the country and the head of the parliament in the speaker as spouses does not sit well with the tradition in our parliamentary democracy, and not just Jamaica, across the world that has our system of having a speaker who is independent of the government. This is a very important matter because the speaker is the umpire. We had some concerns, but we decided not to take an issue with it after she was appointed. Leader of opposition business didn't object at the time, and I was prepared to work with it. But having seen what has happened since, with these reports not being tabled on a timely basis, Integrity Commission reports, some of them being sent to the Oversight Committee, which the government controls, which they may never be published in that eventuality. And seeing that the opinion that they're relying on from the Attorney General, given to the Parliament, they won't share it with the public and with us to know whether or not the justifications are sound in law. I just feel it's a very bad situation that has happened under her watch, and I thought I should bring it to the public's attention that this is a matter of concern. And I'm not alone.
It was a speaker.
Have I what?
Have you written to the Prime Minister raising concern about this?
I raised it in the Parliament today. And so, you know, when I write to the Prime Minister, he never replies.
Why did it take you so long to raise it in the Parliament?
I have spoken, Julian has spoken on the matter of the reports not being tabled on several occasions, so have I. This is a budget presentation when I get to speak in an unfettered way on whatever issues affecting the nation that I choose to raise. That's the one opportunity I have. I don't have that opportunity to speak freely in Parliament generally because of the rules of how Parliament is conducted. I chose to make the point today when the nation would be listening, and it's a significant moment. budget presentation of the leader of the opposition.
It was
I thought it was the right time to do it.
It was the speaker who raised the issue of the quorum, sir. Was that appropriate versus someone on the floor of the parliament raising that issue?
I think it was brought to their attention by Mr. Warmington, who has been fired, but is still very much in their minds and dictating how they operate, apparently.
Has any members of the government reached out to you and said, well, look, Mark, that was unfortunate?
Not yet. Not yet. I have a ton of messages on my phone, which I haven't gone through yet, but I'm not aware that they've reached out. But I would very much like them to do so. I hope some of the cooler heads will see that this was a really unforced error on their part, and that they will retrieve the situation so that, you know, we can feel more comfortable about participating in the budget debate. But as it stands now, I must say I feel that they've destroyed this budget debate effectively.
Will they give you time on Thursday to finish your presentation?
I don't know. I completed my presentation on Duke Street on an old brick wall in front of the crowd. Yeah, and it was, and even though I didn't have a microphone, it was picked up quite clearly on the audio that I've seen it and I've heard it. So, you know, I've said my piece on that. You know, whether they want to allow me to complete or not, certainly if they offer it, I'll consider it. Because the points that I didn't get to make are the points I really wanted to drive
I'll ask
home.
again, should Mrs. Holness step aside, sir? Should Mrs. Holness step aside?
I personally think that on reflection and seeing the way it has unfolded, it would be best if we had a speaker who one could say is independent of the government.
So she should step aside?
But, you know, ultimately, that decision is already made. And for her to step aside or not is really up to her and her husband. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.